If this fails, the Dead Sea dies. Understand the urgent plan. Imagine a country defying the very logic of nature, pushing an entire sea upwards, overcoming gravity to save a lake that is disappearing before our eyes. This story sounds like something out of a futuristic movie, but it's happening right now. In the next few minutes, you'll discover how Israel is orchestrating one of the most audacious projects of the century, a colossal, risky, and almost unbelievable plan. Get ready. What you're about to hear may change your perception of engineering and environmental survival. This video will reveal what's behind this titanic maneuver, which involves advanced technology, extreme calculations, and a race against time. But before we continue, I want to invite you to join our channel. Here, we explore mysteries, impressive curiosities, and projects that defy the impossible. If you enjoy mind-blowing content, subscribe now. Enjoy the video now, because the journey we're about to take is one that will captivate you from beginning to end. Returning to the topic, consider the audacity of moving water from the Red Sea or the Mediterranean to the mountains near the Dead Sea. This movement against gravity requires gigantic structures, massive energy, and absolute precision. And Israel is fully committed to it. But why all this effort? The answer is more urgent than you might imagine. The Dead Sea, one of the most iconic and unique places on Earth, is shrinking at an accelerated rate. Craters are appearing in the ground, tourism is threatened, and an entire ecosystem is close to collapse. The situation is critical and demands immediate action. That's why this project, both grand and controversial, has attracted so much global attention. By pumping seawater towards a mountain, Israel is attempting to save a millennia-old natural treasure. And throughout this chapter, you will understand every detail of this monumental operation. Prepare to delve into one of the greatest environmental and technological challenges of our time. Is the Dead Sea dying? The Dead Sea, known for its high salinity and ability to make anything float, is undergoing a grim transformation. In recent decades, its level has been falling rapidly, causing worrying impacts. Giant cracks have opened up on its shores, revealing how quickly this environment is disappearing. Each year, it loses about 1 meter of depth, which is alarming. This phenomenon is not merely a geographical detail, it is linked to the intensive use of the region's rivers, especially the Jordan River, which fed the Dead Sea. However, a significant portion of this water has been diverted over the years for agriculture, industry, and urban supply. As a result, almost none of it reaches the lake today. As a result, the area is becoming increasingly unstable, affecting roads, hotels, and tourist infrastructure. Several craters have appeared unexpectedly, swallowing cars, structures, and even entire plots of land. The scene is almost post-apocalyptic, and scientists warn that if nothing is done, the Dead Sea could become unrecognizable in a few decades. In addition to the environmental impacts, there are strong economic repercussions. Tourism in the region is vital for Israel, Jordan, and Palestine, and the shrinking of the lake directly compromises businesses and jobs. The mining industries also depend on its water, which makes the situation even more delicate. This crisis is the backdrop for the project to pump water from another sea to the site. Without intervention, the Dead Sea could become just a geographical memory, and it is precisely in this urgency that the motivation for one of the most daring hydraulic works in the world is born. The idea of pumping a sea up to a mountain. When someone proposes moving millions of cubic meters of water upwards against gravity, the normal reaction would be to doubt. However, in Israel, this has become a real and meticulously studied strategy. The idea is simple in theory, but extraordinarily complex in practice, pumping water from a low-lying sea to an elevated reservoir in the mountains. Once up there, this water would be gradually released into the Dead Sea, helping to restore its level. But this movement is not so trivial. It requires gigantic canals, tunnels, pumping stations, and equipment capable of withstanding unimaginable pressures. It's heavy engineering at the limit of human capacity. Altitude is the main challenge. Making the water rise hundreds of meters requires an immense amount of energy. Therefore, part of the project involves using systems that harness the water's own fall to generate electricity, attempting to make the process more efficient and sustainable. The structure needs to be robust enough to operate for decades and withstand unpredictable climate changes. Furthermore, engineers need to ensure that the mixing of waters with different salinities does not generate unexpected environmental impacts. Every detail has been meticulously studied over the years. Although it's a gigantic undertaking, many experts say this may be the only real chance to save the Dead Sea. Without continuous replenishment, it will continue to shrink irreversibly. And the solution of pumping an entire sea, too, that might be exactly the kind of audacity the moment demands. The engineering behind this project begins with the creation of gigantic underground corridors, capable of transporting massive volumes of water without significant loss. These tunnels traverse entire mountains, connecting different altitudes with precision. Every centimeter of this route has been calculated to prevent collapses and ensure total stability. The construction requires heavy machinery and teams working day and night. It is an effort that combines courage, technique, and long-term vision. Engineers also needed to predict pressure variations along the route. As the water rises, the internal force increases exponentially, which can compromise structures if they are not reinforced. Special pipes were manufactured to withstand extreme levels using metal alloys and custom-made materials. Cooling these structures also became fundamental, since friction generates accumulated heat. Without these precautions, the entire system could fail in an instant. Each part functions like a gear in a colossally complex clock. Another challenge was preventing leaks in unstable regions. As the soil near the Dead Sea becomes increasingly fragile, any failure could create even larger craters. Sensors were installed at different depths to monitor vibrations, displacements, and temperature. The slightest sign of anomaly immediately alerts teams. The technology here is so advanced that it practically listens to the ground in real time. Nothing can be left to chance when the mission involves saving an ancient lake. In addition to all the physical obstacles, there were also political and legal issues. The project crosses regions of great geopolitical tension, requiring delicate agreements and cooperation between governments that do not always agree with each other. Negotiation tables were opened, discussing everything from routes to water rights. Each decision involved multiple stakeholders with different priorities. The advancement of the plan is as much diplomatic as it is scientific, and each step needs to be negotiated with extreme care. The operation only became possible because international organizations also joined the discussion. Environmental agencies, climate consultants, and conservation experts provided opinions to ensure that the impact was minimized. A set of strict protocols was created regarding the preservation of local fauna and flora. The main concern was to prevent the change in water composition from altering entire ecosystems. The environmental complexity is as great as the structural one, and any mistake could cause irreversible damage. The next step involves the construction of temporary reservoirs in the mountains. These reservoirs function as hydraulic lungs, storing water before releasing it over time. They need to withstand gigantic volumes without risk of overflowing. This includes calculations for wind, erosion, and even earthquakes. The design considers extreme events that could occur once every 100 years. Safety is treated as a central element from day one. After all, any failure could devastate nearby cities. With the reservoirs ready, the intelligent control system kicks in. It regulates the amount of water flowing daily towards the Dead Sea, adjusting according to natural evaporation, temperature, and the current lake level. This monitoring happens minute by minute, using satellites and sensors spread throughout the region. If the water rises too quickly, the system automatically reduces the release. It's an almost living system, learning and adapting to environmental conditions. Technology and nature connected in real time. The process of the water falling has also been transformed into an opportunity. As it descends again towards the Dead Sea, gravitational force generates energy, which is captured by hydroelectric turbines. Thus, part of the energy expenditure of the ascent is offset by the descent itself. It's as if the system breathes, using the movement of the water to self-sustain. Although it doesn't cover all consumption, it helps to make the project more sustainable. A continuous cycle between effort and energy return. a delicate but essential balance. When the water finally reaches the Dead Sea, it undergoes a controlled adjustment process. This is because the external water has a very different salinity from the lake's original water. If mixed abruptly, it could change the region's natural chemistry. Therefore, special tanks make the transition in stages, balancing minerals and temperature. This care prevents the death of microorganisms and unexpected reactions. Maintaining the Dead Sea's identity is as important as restoring its water level. Preservation needs to be complete. The expansion of the lake brings direct benefits to tourism, which is one of the economic engines of the region. Hotels, spas, and leisure areas that were threatened by craters and receding water can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Visitors are once again finding impressive and safe landscapes, boosting local businesses. The return of tourism also encourages investment in infrastructure. The economy reacts like a revived organism. It's a positive chain reaction, driven by environmental recovery. Local communities also benefit from the project. Roads that were at risk are reinforced and constantly monitored. New jobs are created during the construction, maintenance, and operation phases of the system. Educational programs are implemented to teach about water conservation and climate change. The relationship between the people and the territory is strengthened. The project ceases to be merely technological and becomes social. The population becomes part of the solution and not just a spectator. Finally, this monumental movement can serve as an example for other regions of the world. Several lakes and inland seas are shrinking for similar reasons, requiring innovative and bold solutions. Israel shows that despite the costs and challenges, there is hope through engineering and international cooperation. The project inspires countries to face their own environmental crises with creativity. The final message is clear. When humanity decides to act, even gravity can be overcome. Challenge. The impossible becomes merely a matter of planning. The story of this monumental project didn't begin suddenly. It's the result of decades of debate, research, and failed attempts to save the Dead Sea. Scientists had been warning since the 1970s that the lake was heading towards inevitable collapse. However, the political complexities of the region delayed important decisions for too long. Numerous international warnings were needed before the urgency became impossible to ignore. And when the crisis reached a critical point, the unthinkable finally began to be planned. The first step was to analyze all possible water transfer routes. The most famous of these became known as the Red Sea-Dead Sea Canal, which envisioned bringing water from the south to compensate for the loss of the lake. But this initial plan had enormous challenges: extremely high costs, environmental risks, and the need for extensive regional cooperation. Even so, it rekindled the dream of revitalizing the Dead Sea, paving the way for more modern versions of the project. Israel saw a spark of viability there. Subsequent studies also explored the transport of water from the Mediterranean Sea. This route, although different, also required overcoming rugged terrain and high altitudes. Engineers needed to develop technologies that did not exist at the time. With the scientific advances of recent decades, hydraulic pumps have become more efficient, sensors more precise, and pipelines more resistant. The evolution of engineering has made possible what was once considered fiction. Ideas began to take concrete form. The local population, however, received the plan with mixed feelings. For some, it was the only hope for economic survival. For others, it was a risky intervention that could forever alter the lake's identity. Public meetings were organized, with experts explaining the risks and benefits in detail. This dialogue helped build a collective vision for the preservation of the Dead Sea. Even with disagreements, there was a consensus. Something needed to be done urgently. International environmental organizations entered the discussion, raising a series of important warnings. The possibility of mixing waters with different salinities could generate unpredictable chemical reactions. Furthermore, altering the lake's composition could affect companies that depend on its unique minerals. These warnings pressured planners to seek even more careful solutions. The project ceased to be merely an engineering endeavor and became an exercise in ecological balance. The lake's future would depend on this extreme care. Another sensitive point was the energy issue. Pumping an entire sea against gravity requires absurd amounts of energy. This raised the question of which sources would be used and how to reduce the environmental impact of this consumption. Hydroelectric turbines, solar energy, and hybrid systems were tested to find the most efficient formula. The search was not only for functionality but also for sustainability. After all, it's of little use to save a lake by destroying the surrounding climate. The construction of the reservoirs in the mountains involved engineering challenges comparable to those of the world's largest dams. It was necessary to ensure that the water remained stable, even in extreme weather conditions. These reservoirs were equipped with sensors that monitor every millimeter of wall movement. Drainage systems were created to prevent unexpected seepage. All of this reinforces the seriousness and commitment to safety. Nothing was improvised. When the system was finally ready for testing, international pressure mounted. Neighboring countries scrutinized every detail, seeking to ensure there would be no impact beyond their borders. Regional cooperation became essential. Information was shared, reports were released, and experts from various countries reviewed each step of the process. The project ceased to be solely Israel's and transformed into an initiative involving the entire region. The responsibility was immense. Initial tests revealed both advancements and necessary adjustments. Minor chemical variations needed correction, and additional reinforcements were installed in specific sections. The testing phase ensured that no surprises would occur when the system was fully activated. Simulations included everything from earthquakes to unexpected floods. Each scenario was rigorously analyzed. Over time, the system became more robust and reliable. When the water finally began to recede toward the Dead Sea, a new chapter began. The scene impressed engineers and local residents who witnessed the first controlled drop in water level as a historic moment. It was the beginning of a new era for the region. Gradually, the lake level began to respond, albeit timidly. Hope took liquid form. The impossible was happening before everyone's eyes. With the gradual recovery, the ecosystem began to show the first signs of stabilization. The nearby craters slowed their advance, and the shores regained their resilience. Researchers began studying the changes in real time, monitoring how the lake reacted to the new water flow. This continuous observation is essential to ensure that the process remains safe. Science is following every step of the resurgence, and this monumental effort has attracted worldwide attention. Several countries have begun studying the project as an example for their own environmental crises. The idea of moving oceans, seas, or rivers to save threatened regions is spreading. Israel has ended up creating not just a work of art, but a global benchmark. The revitalization of the Dead Sea now inspires new environmental missions around the planet. It is a milestone in the history of engineering and nature preservation. The visual impact of the project impresses even those accustomed to megaprojects. From afar, the structures appear to form giant arteries transporting life to a region that was dying. The mountains have been precisely cut, revealing tunnels that gleam with metallic cladding under artificial lights. Water flows along this entire path as if fulfilling an inevitable destiny. The contrast between rock, technology, and movement creates an almost surreal landscape. It is engineering transformed into a natural spectacle. The daily operation of the system requires highly trained teams. Technicians monitor data on large screens, interpreting graphs in real time. If any pressure exceeds the limit, alarms are triggered instantly. Each pump, turbine, and valve undergoes constant inspections. The system never sleeps, because the Dead Sea cannot wait either. Maintenance is as important as construction. Without this intense monitoring, the entire project could be jeopardized. The regional economy has undergone a clear revitalization. Cities once threatened by unstable soil are now expanding their tourist areas. Hotels have built new wings, spas have renovated their pools, and local businesses have taken advantage of the renewed flow of visitors. The image of a recovering Dead Sea has become a symbol of hope. Travelers from all over the world return to experience the unique sensation of floating in its dense waters. Tourism is reconnecting with its historical identity. From a scientific standpoint, the project has opened doors to unprecedented research. Laboratories are studying how the lake's chemical composition reacts to the new water flow. Geologists are monitoring the craters, seeking to understand how the soil's equilibrium is being rebuilt. Climatologists are analyzing the impact of controlled evaporation on the local atmosphere. The Dead Sea has become a living laboratory. Each discovery contributes to improving the project itself. Science and practice go hand in hand. The local population also underwent a transformation in how they viewed their relationship with water. Educational programs taught children and adults about conservation and the intelligent use of water resources. Schools received technical visits to reservoirs and control centers. The perception of sustainability gained a new meaning. People became active participants in the preservation of the lake. It is not just a government project, it is everyone's project. Engineers from all over the world now visit Israel to gain a first-hand understanding of the applied technology. Delegations arrive to study the high-pressure pumps, tunnels, sensors, and intelligent control systems. Universities include the project in their hydraulic and environmental engineering courses. The project has become a global benchmark for addressing water scarcity challenges. The main lesson is clear: extreme solutions require extreme innovation, and the Dead Sea has become a global learning resource. Despite the progress, some advocate for continuous monitoring for decades. Nature is unpredictable, and climate change can alter scenarios rapidly. Researchers warn that the current balance is still delicate. They emphasize the need for constant adjustments to the water flow. The challenge, therefore, does not end with the construction. It will continue as long as the Dead Sea exists. Vigilance must be eternal, as must the commitment to its preservation. Neighboring countries began considering similar projects to stabilize their own natural resources. The idea of transferring water between regions gained traction, especially in areas facing accelerated desertification. Some nations have already initiated preliminary studies inspired by the Israeli model. The Dead Sea has ceased to be merely a local concern and has become an example for the entire arid zone of the Middle East. Environmental cooperation can become a bridge for regional unity. International media began covering the project extensively. Documentaries, special reports, and investigative series showed the world the technical feat involved. Global public opinion was divided between fascination and environmental concern, but most recognized the magnitude of the effort and its importance. The project gained the status of a historical landmark, a narrative of humanity's struggle against the deterioration of nature, an indispensable chapter in the modern environmental debate. As the lake level slowly rises, new landscapes begin to emerge. Areas that were once dry are now filling with water again, creating different patterns on the saline surface. The scenery impresses photographers, tourists, and researchers. The change is slow, but visible. Each recovered centimeter carries a sense of victory. The transformation is not only physical, it is symbolic. It represents humanity's capacity to repair what it has caused. Within Israel, the project has become a source of national pride. Even amidst criticism, the general feeling is one of accomplishment. Seeing the Dead Sea breathe again has reinforced the idea that great challenges require action, not hesitation. The project has become part of the country's modern identity, a testament to the ability to innovate under extreme pressure, proof that the impossible can be redesigned with determination. And so, the sea pumped into the mountain is not just an engineering feat, but a powerful symbol. It represents the courage to confront gigantic natural forces, the union between science and purpose, and the commitment to protecting a millennia-old heritage. The future of the Dead Sea remains under construction, but for the first time in decades, there is real hope. Israel has shown the world that when life is at risk, even gravity can be defied, and this story is still a long way off. Determine. When we analyze the entire journey involved in the Dead Sea rescue, from the first scientific warnings to the technological audacity of pumping an entire sea against gravity, we realize that we are facing one of the most significant works of the 21st century, not only for its physical size, but for the symbolism it carries. The Dead Sea, one of the oldest and most peculiar places on the planet, was silently dying, losing depth, intensity, territory, and even its identity. For decades, humanity watched from afar, almost as if it were inevitable. But then a vision emerged, that it was possible to fight, even when natural logic seemed to impose insurmountable limits. By recounting all aspects of this extraordinary project, we can understand that saving the Dead Sea was not simply an environmental act. It was an act of resistance, dialogue, and innovation. The idea of pumping water upwards, raising it to mountains, and then returning it to the collapsing lake initially sounds like a kind of hydrological madness. But this type of technical madness has already moved civilizations in the past, when water staircases, aqueducts, and water wheels seemed equally impossible. The world advances when someone decides to confront what seemed immutable. The Israeli plan to transport water from another sea to stabilize the Dead Sea stems not only from hydrographic necessity, but also from the understanding that the region's geography directly influences the economy, tourism, and daily life. Throughout this undertaking, we have seen how communities have been impacted. Craters have opened up, roads have collapsed, hotels have been abandoned, and entire areas have become unsafe. The environmental crisis has transformed into a human crisis. And when that happens, passivity ceases to be justifiable. The construction of tunnels, high-pressure pumps, state-of-the-art reservoirs, and automated systems was not only an expression of technical capability, but of collective determination. Scientists, engineers, diplomats, environmentalists, and local residents, each with different perspectives and concerns, needed to converse and adjust their visions to find common ground. The complexity of the project lies both in the mathematical calculations and in the delicate political balance. The Dead Sea does not belong only to Israel. It is a historical, cultural, and natural piece shared by Jordan, Palestine, and all of humanity. Saving this place, therefore, is not an isolated achievement, but a collective effort. Looking at the scientific dimension of the work, it becomes clear that it represents a living laboratory for the future of the planet. Climate change is imposing similar challenges in various parts of the world. Lakes evaporating, rivers drying up, seas receding, land becoming unstable, ecosystems collapsing. What is happening in the Dead Sea is, in essence, a global preview. And that is why this initiative has come under observation by universities, institutes, and governments around the world. There is enormous interest in understanding what works, what needs adjustments, and how this model can be adapted to different climatic realities. From an environmental standpoint, the project isn't perfect either, and that's important to acknowledge. Altering natural systems always generates risks, sometimes unpredictable ones. Therefore, continuous monitoring is as essential as the pumping of water itself. Nature responds in complex ways, and only careful monitoring can correct any deviations before they become permanent damage. The Dead Sea is a delicate organism, and its recovery requires a combination of the brute force of engineering and the scientific subtlety of chemical balance. Nevertheless, the initiative showed the world something fundamental. Technology can be an ally in preservation, provided it is used responsibly, with planning and purpose. This reinforces a message that is especially relevant for modern humanity, increasingly dependent on natural resources on a planet where these resources are becoming scarce. The Dead Sea demonstrates that it is possible to act before the loss becomes definitive, and that action must happen while there is still time. Considering the social dimension, the project brought renewed hope to local populations who, for decades, witnessed the sad advance of the crumbling landscape. The arrival of visitors has boosted local economies. New opportunities have arisen from the gradual recovery of the lake. Areas previously considered dangerous have become accessible again. The region has resurfaced, not only physically, but emotionally. For those who live there, seeing the water recede is seeing the return of a cultural and spiritual symbol that spans millennia. The Dead Sea has always been more than just a lake. It's a point of convergence between science, history, religion, tourism, commerce, and mythology. When you tamper with it, you also tamper with the deep narrative of humanity. Recovering it, therefore, is preserving memory, identity, and meaning. And that makes this project even more grand. From a philosophical standpoint, this monumental endeavor invites us to reflect on humanity's role in relation to the planet itself. We are simultaneously responsible for the damage and capable of repairing it. The technology that destroys can be the same one that restores. The ambition that extinguishes can be the same one that saves. The Dead Sea is a mirror of these dualities. It reminds us that nature may seem eternal, but it is not. Everything needs care and renewal, including the most iconic and seemingly indestructible places. And that's why the work takes on such a strong meaning. It shows that great solutions require great courage. They require accepting risk, facing criticism, challenging the impossible, and working collectively. Creating tunnels inside mountains, pumping water against gravity, transforming entire landscapes to avoid environmental collapse. All of this requires not only engineering but audacity. The same audacity that has already moved pyramids, suspended cities, stone ships, bridges that seemed absurd, and works that we now consider natural. The Dead Sea now enters this catalog of achievements that transcend their utility, becoming symbols of human persistence. When we consider the legacy of this project, we realize that it doesn't end at the lake. It resonates throughout the world. It inspires regions facing desertification, teaches about international cooperation, proves that water solutions can be created even in hostile environments, and above all, it reinforces the idea that humanity doesn't have to passively watch destruction. We can intervene, repair, rebuild. It is clear that the future still holds challenges. The global climate continues to change, water consumption is increasing, and the pressure on fragile ecosystems will not disappear anytime soon. Therefore, the story of the Dead Sea should not be considered finished. It remains open, as a constant reminder that acting early is better than acting late, and acting late is better than not acting at all. The lake is being saved, but its balance depends on eternal vigilance. And so, when we look at the whole undertaking, from political negotiations to engineering calculations, from environmental risks to creative solutions, from imminent destruction to recovered hope, we understand that we are facing something bigger than a simple pumping project. We are facing a milestone in the history of the coexistence between nature and technology. A testament to what happens when humanity decides to confront its mistakes with responsibility and vision. The Dead Sea is resurging. Slowly, yes, but steadily. Every inch recovered is a victory against inertia, against abandonment, and against the idea that certain losses are inevitable. Pumping water from a sea into a mountain is not just a technical solution. It's a brilliant metaphor for overcoming adversity. When the world said it can't be done, Israel responded with calculations, concrete results, and courage. It can, and it proved it. Ultimately, this story leaves a powerful message that big problems require great willpower, that nothing is completely lost as long as there is action, imagination, and unity, that gravity can be defied, that geography can be redrawn, and that hope can be pumped back into places that were drying up, literally. The Dead Sea is reborn, and with us, the idea that saving the planet is still possible is also reborn.